Sweet. All right, so we've decided to go. We're going to do a philosophical fellowship, and we're going to start off with a slow reading of Ivo de Janeiro's Principles of Philosophy, chapter 4, Heraclitus. And I guess we're going to just kind of start reading, and then when we kind of feel the point that we want to go into the chanting part, we'll feel into that moment. All right.
You want to start reading, Guy, or?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll start. We can do a chapter. We can do a paragraph and alternate. All right, chapter 4, Heraclitus. Heraclitus, 6th and 5th century BC, lived in Ephesus, a Greek city located on what is today the west coast of Turkey. Together, Parmenides and Anaximander, he is one of the initial thinkers of our tradition. Initial here does not have a historical sense and means more than early or first. The initial thinkers of our traditions are those whose thinking initiates this tradition as such, not because they intended to give rise to a tradition, but because their thinking preserves the first, in itself initial, breaking of the knowledge of discontingency, which, that initial breaking, remains the source and, in a sense, the future of all subsequent thinking to this day. In light of this circumstance, we can say that in Heraclitus speaks the very initiation or onset or inception of thinking. In this initiation, which preserves an earliness of thinking that does not cease to come towards us and hand us over to what is coming, the light of discontingency shines in a brightness and clarity, filled with the darkness whence that clarity stems, which we do not find in subsequent philosophical thought. This reminds us that what we call onset is not a mere starting point which we soon leave behind, but on the contrary, the inexhaustible richness of the only source of all sense and being, which perennially returns into itself and keeps to itself, and thus has always already outreached all that may flow from it.
I can go with the next paragraph. By what is Heraclitus's thinking awoken, attuned, and claimed? What makes itself known to him, asking to be acknowledged and preserved? We can briefly indicate it thus. In between all beings, there flashes, though invisibly, what is itself never a being, but rather the in itself skinding, jointing one, which places all beings into their fair, measured, fitting appearing, while in this manner gathering all that appears into a whole, by virtue of the unifying, gathering, placing unity of the one everything stands together in the same wholesome jointing, while at the same time each thing is scinded from and in its uniqueness clearly stands out against all other things. Heraclitus's regard is in the first place captivated by the unapparent harmony of the whole of beings, not just by these beings as such, nor only by the whole of beings, but by harmony as such, to wit, by the original discontingent principle of harmonization. What he gathers in his thinking is the ubiquitous harmonizing origin itself, which, by virtue of its own schismatic gathering, frees but also leaves to itself, grants but also denies, lights but also extinguishes, the harmonic, conveniently jointed whole of all there is. His first name for this principle of harmonization, his name for the skinding, gathering, unifying one, which is also the fundamental word of his thinking, is logos.
Because the logos is the ultimate principle and therefore never independent of man, it makes itself known as a claiming need or stress, which I'm just looking at the footnote. The word stress is not to be taken in its present psychological or physical meaning. Stress comes from the Latin stringere, or to draw tight, as a trait of logos. So it makes itself known as a claiming need or stress, which addresses thinking for it to acknowledge the principle as such. In fragment 2, we read the following, and I can't read Greek. Therefore, the stress is this. Can you read Greek, Daniel?
We don't have to read the Greek.
No, okay. Therefore, the stress or the drawing tightness is this: to follow the togetherness that is what is common in beings, for the togetherness is what is common. However, while the logos reigns as this togetherness in beings, the crowd lives as if anyone had an understanding to himself. Or in a more explicit rendering, therefore, the stressing need is to assent to the common, namely to the togetherness in beings. That is, to the initially concerning trait of pure towardness, which gathers them into one. However, while the logos holds sway as that togetherness in beings, namely as the discontingent gathering that grants them the being and sense, which is for the human being to perceive, the crowd lives as if anyone had, in the first place, an understanding of things to and for himself, so that no community in the form of a togetherness of unique manners of understanding and holding the same logos can arise.
I can read.
Yeah.
Following the togetherness means keeping close to it, seconding it, so as to keep it close, namely by sensing it, ascending to it, seeking an accordance in thinking with it, and preserving that accordance in a saying, so that the togetherness itself can openly hold sway as the gathering, sense-bestowing principle. However, as is said in fragment 72, they do not follow it, but are at odds with it. Again, they is not some group or class of people, but us, namely the crowd of indistinct human beings who, in the inertia of the constitutive trait of our being, live as if anyone had an understanding to and for himself. That is, an understanding delimited by and sufficient for his contingent being or lived experience. And for that reason, this understanding, however, is neither true nor unique. In fact, an understanding can be unique only insofar as it gathers what is initially unique, namely the togetherness, or we could say the gathering towardness of the logos. The understanding to and for oneself is one's own, merely for the fact that it happens to be mine or his or hers or theirs. Because it so happens that I or they see or he or she sees things in this or that way, while being unsuspectingly struck in inertia, that is, without ever venturing on a path of acknowledgement that is free from that condition. The own understanding is thus the set of personal, as we would say today, opinions that refer to contingent states of things and their immediate impact on life, while a true understanding can arise only by following the impersonal, discontingent togetherness, which, although it is the same for all, can only be known thanks to the unique relation to it that constitutes each single human being as such, and therefore can only be known in a singular, unrepeatable manner, and never once and for all.
Independently of whether or not the crowd happens to have ever heard of this togetherness, it is deaf with regard to the original gathering that constitutes it, i.e. the logos. That is, the crowd is incapable of gathering the logos in its turn, or, to say it another way, of bearing this contingent gathering. This deafness is, in the first place, a deafness with regard to the stress as which the logos claims man to bear it as the unique togetherness in beings. In the domain of contingency, there is no such stress, as its space and time is occupied by the exclusive urgencies and needs, wants and necessities, demands and requirements of life. The main reference for our study of the Logos is fragment 50. Ugemu alatologu accusantas homologein sophonestin hen pantaenai. An explicating translation of this fragment reads as follows. If you do not listen to me, that is, to my words, as if they were merely a statement of how things are to me and for me, but rather to what my saying indicates, to wit, the Logos, that is, the gathering. If, as a consequence, you yourself mind it and tune in to it, and indeed tune in with it, thus owning to your being's native belongingness to it, then an accordance in gathering breaks, a tune in one voice, namely an accordance in which your own gathering, the gathering in which your being consists, belongs to the same with, and indeed gathers the same as, the original gathering, in such a way that your gathering actually gathers the gathering itself, so as to let all things be gathered accordingly. There, in flagrancy and openness of that accordance, a fitting knowledge of the original gathering holds, the knowledge in which the gathering itself shows as the one atoning all, that is, as the one that, by virtue of its atoning, kindles beings as such and in whole. Or, in two more concise versions, provided you listen not to me, but gather yourselves into the gathering itself, an accordance in gathering gives rise to the fitting knowledge. One atones all. Listening not to me, but owning to the gathering. Agreement on the same. Fair knowledge breaks. One, all. We could use one of those sentences for fellowship, or we continue reading.
Let's continue a bit.
Okay,
You want to read next?
sure. There we go. Okay. If you do not listen to me, but rather to the Logos, the common attitude towards the thinker is not that of listening through his words towards that to which his speaking answers, thus letting oneself be concerned by that which says itself through the thinker's words, but to take what he says as his words, as an utterance that emanates from him and ultimately is about him, insofar as it states his point of view or his opinion. In short, the common attitude is to take a thinker's utterances as a sense that is conditional upon the given being he happens to be. A sense that, on the other hand, the given beings that we are might, from our point of view, acknowledge and reserve the right to accept, in which case he is right, or to reject, in which case he is wrong, while we are right in saying so. In fact, in order to be on the safe side, we like all sense and meaning to be a matter of somebody's point of view, so that what is at stake in speaking is whose point of view prevails, rather than the clarification of what is common. In this manner, we can forever philosophize about philosophy without ever leaving the sure haven of how things are to us and for us. At the same time, we accept that at some level, there is an objectivity to things, which, however, does not contradict, but indeed provides the basis for the existence of a variety of subjective points of view on these things.
When a domain of speaking and listening is defined in this manner, it is already decided that what we can and must take place in this domain is that the advocate of one thesis prevails over the advocate of another thesis. What matters is this prevailing of a point of view. Indeed, the prevailing of the fact that everything is conceived in terms of conflicting points of view, while the coming to light of a truth concerning the issue at hand is neglected. In fact, in this domain, we are assured against the fact that the issue itself might speak and claim our listening, and speaking in a manner that requires us to abandon the safe harbor of competing personal points of view and offer our being to the clarification of a certain sense that is independent of us, but requires our attention in order to be acknowledged as such. This is why Heraclitus says, your listening must not focus on me, just as my speaking does not target you, but in the first place answers the logos. Because such listening is in fact a deafness. Rather, for the time being, forget yourself and forget me. Let yourselves too be the openness to the principle that we all, each one of us in his or her unique manner, are, and thus listen to these words as words of the Logos itself, i.e., words in which the latter says itself, that is, makes itself known. In short, listen in such a manner as to answer the Logos yourselves. In fact, such listening that answers the Logos implies that you are listening to yourselves insofar as your being natively belongs to the Logos, and your being belongs to it precisely as the gathering openness to the Logos, through which the Logos itself comes into the open. And only thus, that is, thanks to its being held and born in the open, is the Logos in the first place. In other words, listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such. In offering your being to the Logos, you are finally yourself, i.e., you let your unique true self have its say. You self.
I would like to read that again.
I would say, Daniel, that's the perfect marketing point for the dyad practice.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to read it again, sorry. That's what I need to do now.
Yes.
This is why Heraclitus says, your listening must not focus on me, just as my speaking does not target you, but in the first place answers the Logos. Because such listening is in fact a deafness. Rather, for the time being, forget yourselves and forget me. Let yourselves too be the openness to the principle that we all, each one of us in his or her unique manner, are, and thus listen to these words as words of the Logos itself, i.e. words in which the latter says itself, that is, makes itself known. In short, listen in such a manner as to answer the Logos yourselves. In fact, such listening that answers the Logos implies that you are listening to yourselves, insofar as your being natively belongs to the Logos. And your being belongs to it precisely as the gathering openness to the Logos, through which the Logos itself comes into the open. And only thus, that is, thanks to its being held and born in the open, is the Logos in the first place. In other words, listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such. In offering your being to the Logos, you are finally yourself, i.e. you let your unique true self have its say. You self.
Yep.
Shall we pull a sentence out from that?
I would like to, Sandra, could you read that what I just started reading? Could you read it one more time?
Yeah.
I like digesting.
When I first read that, that's what I thought. This is what we are doing in that practice, Daniel.
Yeah. I also like when we came to this, like, things open. So,
So reading from where?
like, this is why Heraclitus says, it's like in the middle of this last.
Okay, yeah. Okay. This is why Heraclitus says, your listening must not focus on me, just as my speaking does not target you, but in the first place answers the Logos. Because such listening is in fact a deafness. Rather, for the time being, forget yourselves and forget me. Let yourselves too be the openness to the principle that we all, each one of us in his or her unique manner, are. And thus listen to these words as words of the Logos itself, i.e., words in which the latter says itself, that is, makes itself known. In short, listen in such a manner as to answer the Logos yourselves. In fact, such listening that answers the Logos implies that you are listening to yourselves, insofar as your being natively belongs to the Logos. And your being belongs to it precisely as the gathering openness to the Logos, through which the Logos itself comes into the open. And only thus, that is, thanks to its being held and born in the open, is the Logos in the first place. In other words, listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such. In offering your being to the Logos, you are finally yourself, i.e., you let your unique true self have its say. You self.
Does he want another?
Sorry?
Does he want another shot?
Hmm?
Do
Do you
want
wanna read
a shot,
I would not continue because like I know what passage is coming, and I think it's like because it's about Legain and what gathering means. And we only have half an hour, so I would kind of dwell here perhaps.
This let's see. Right, I think, let's see, the second to the last sentence, I think, is probably where I would. It's like, so in fact, such listening that answers the Logos implies that you are listening to yourselves insofar as your being natively belongs to Logos, and your Logos belongs to it precisely as the gathering openness to the Logos through which the Logos itself comes to the open. And maybe starting here, only thus, that is, thanks to its being held and born in the open, is the Logos in the first place. In other words, listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourself on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such. Something in there, in that last.
I would start maybe with listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Okay.
Okay, there. Okay.
Because it's a complete sentence.
Yeah. Okay.
What's the first word that starts with?
Listening.
It's in the middle of a sentence, Guy.
Okay. Just mark it out.
The fifth line up from the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Listening. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I guess you just want to go same order. So I'll go, then Daniel, then.
Okay.
Okay. Chanting. Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such. In offering your being to the Logos, oh, sorry. That's the end of it.
Yeah. Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourself on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Listening here means owning your native belongingness to the Logos, gathering yourselves on it, and offering your being to nothing else than this, that the Logos may hold sway as such.
Shall we do precious speaking?
Yeah.
Yeah, precious speaking. Listening is owning.
I wonder what offering my being truly is.
There is nothing that I myself have or own, other than what has been given to me as Logos.
True listening is hearing and already belonging.
To whom am I answering right now?
Speaking and listening is the gathering.
To indwell Logos is to be already dwelled by Logos.
The stillness is revealing itself as inexhaustibly rich.
The logos moves all. Without itself moving.
A deeper ear hears silence.
It is miraculous to receive a word that is so old and yet so early.
Attune to having already been attuned by that which is non-apparent and most constituting.
Attuning, questioning, listening, all point to the principle.
I feel porous and open. And reduced by mysterious presence.
I go to listen. In listening, I hear. I hadn't been listening. As listening begins for the first time.
I understand now why when I am questioned by another, I feel I am not heard.
It is wonderfully freeing to answer and to own to the logos and not to other people.
Shall we shift into
Mhm.
what is the second one again?
Oh, just free speaking, is that something like that?
Something like
Oh, forget that.
I also forgot about it.
I think it's where we start to play off of each other.
Oh, that, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we keep the order.
So
Yeah.
Gary, then Daniel, then me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You just keep being struck by listening is owning.
Yeah, there's a hidden depth to all of our senses and to our capacity of speaking, that so it seems we have really forgotten.
There's a sense of opening up through this practice. And in that opening up, an acknowledgement of what previously was unseen, unacknowledged, of the vastness of that unknown in this tiny opening through it, this tiny opening.
Picking up on the vastness and, as Sandra said, and the deeper dimension to every sense. And that sense of logos calling to what's between and non-apparent, and thus sensing through.
Yeah, I'm even just, how all these words are very mysterious. What is sensing? What is owning? And it feels like I have, and probably all of us have, a kind of a memory, a deep, deep memory of what this means. And yet, so we all have the capacity for remembering the principle. And yet it is so it's so hard to, let's say, follow this togetherness, It's so hard to let ourselves be that openness, or realize that native nearness to the principle.
Our sending, which we experience as which I experience as fragmentation, offers the opportunity for the betweenness and access to the opening. Painful as it sometimes is.
It's like if I'm listening, and I'm listening in the depth, I'm listening through, sounds, between sounds, through signs, between signs. The deepest listening would have to be something like hearing silence itself, which in some sense, I'm right back where I started. But
Yeah. It's almost a koan. Listen to that which you cannot hear.
yeah, right.
Listen to the inaudible.
Damn it.
A good
That
is a good koan.
because that is all that can be heard.
Yeah. See the non-apparent.
Hmm.
Look at it. Look at the invisible. Yeah.
So shall we move into free speech? This last 2 minutes.
Takeaway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Takeaway was good.
Yeah. I'm left with just that sense of just that sense of what's most most worthy of hearing is what's most close. It's like the thing that's most close. And then I'm hearing Heraclitus in a big way, and this reading in a big way, basically saying kind of wake up to how weird things are. It's really strange. You really don't have an account for what is most close to you, is the most familiar, is the most, you have some understanding of it, but you really don't understand. And if you did understand, you get how radically weird and uncanny and wondrous things are.
You can go ahead, Sandra.
I felt just a moment of something that was just almost there, but not quite there. And it felt so just so seductive, and my sense is that it's always there, but the opening is very intermittent. And those moments of grace are what sustains everything.
During the whole exercise, like first reading, the word offering stood out, and offering our being, or letting go, letting our true self come to the fore is there was really, I felt a kind of resistance or kind of withholding on my part. Kind of like it's very difficult to really own yourself to this totally other, this pure no thing is very, like really letting go is very difficult.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Logos.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Logos, boy.
Found a hearing. Yet again.
Yeah.
All right.
Fantastic.
Godspeed.
Bye bye.